Hello, beautiful people from all over the world joining us today. I'm Felipe Hoffa, developer advocate for Snowflake, and I'm super happy to be here today with Justin Langseth. Yay! How are you doing, Justin?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Please, can you introduce yourself to everyone that's going watching us today from all over the world? I see hundreds of people already on LinkedIn
Cool.
Live and on YouTube, and this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Justin,
I'm Justin. Been at Snowflake about 5 years. Been in this whole data warehousing space for many, many decades, and happy to be showing some of the latest stuff we're working on over in the labs at Snowflake.
nice. And you say that you've been on the warehouse space for many, many years, but I know you started super young.
Yeah, I started coding when I was, I guess, like, we didn't call it coding at the time, but I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I have a stash of the computers that I used called VIC-20s in my garage, collecting dust until they're ready to be sold for profit.
Yes, you have some classic computers, but yeah, I
Yes.
started young too. I wasn't programming so much, but just a trivia question for our audience before we go to the latest LLM innovations. Uh, your first innovation was creating a BBS, and I wonder how many people know what a BBS is.
I don't know.
So yeah, we were young. This was the times before the internet. I was looking at your bio, and it was just incredible to see uh, people connecting before the internet. You were creating BBS, and now you are still on top of the curve, seeing what's next.
Yeah, well, I also like really enjoy Star Trek as a kid, and I'd always dreamed of having a computer that was like the Star Trek computer that you could just talk to, and it would like respond to you with actual, English. And I think we're going to be demoing that today, finally, after many, many years of trying to do it.
Exactly, and we're not only want to show that we can talk to a computer because yes, everyone learned that ChatGPT exists, and then we had all the open source models. But what you're going to show us today is this running in Snowflake.
Yeah, talking to Snowflake, talking to the llama running in Snowflake, if that makes any sense at all. But we'll show how it's done step by step, and then talk to it.
Yes, so let me see the comments. We're live, so people please ask us questions. Justin knows a lot. Yes, the user says that videos are like a forum. Avinash says that he is here with two of his favorite friends. Yes, Avinash, thank you for joining in. We have people in Arizona, in California, in Dallas, in India, in Texas, in Galway, UK, all over the world. This is really fun. So we have like 25 minutes left. What are we going to see today specifically? I have this blog post that you wrote already up here. Powering the latest LLM innovation, Llama 2 in Snowflake, part 1. What is
Yep.
this about?
So we're going to show the ability to run the Llama chat bot engine, which was created by Meta and more or less open sourced. And we're going to show that chat interface and large language model underneath it running inside Snowflake. Inside Snowflake, meaning in our new Snowpark Container Services system, which we announced at our summit, which
At
allows
Summit.
you to, yeah, it allows you to run containerized compute inside Snowflake. Basically means anything you can code up, put into a container or Docker containers or such, you can now run that inside Snowflake.
Inside Snowflake, so your data is kept safe, everything is in the perimeter, same rules. And I love how we're also calling out here that we not only announced the Snowpark Container Service, we also announced our partnership with NVIDIA.
Yep. And
So
underneath the container services, we have NVIDIA powered GPUs, small ones and really big ones, standing by to run securely those large language models or any other kind of program you want. Inside Snowflake, meaning, as you said, Felipe, your data never goes anywhere. It doesn't go to anyone's API. It doesn't leave the secure Snowflake system.
beautiful. And so for anyone that wants to read more after this, they have your blog here. There's also you co-authored using Snowflake to train, tune, and run NVIDIA NeMo-powered LLMs. That's an adjacent topic.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, I think we should jump into the demo. People love live coding.
All right.
Let me share your screen. And here we have it. What are we looking at now?
Yeah, so this is my Snowflake account. I'm logged in. And what I'm going to do is go step by step to actually take a container that comes from NVIDIA, a base container that runs PyTorch and other GPU-enabled AI stuff. We're going to inject the Llama into it. So we're going to pull the Llama model into that. And then we're going to spin it up, turn it on, and run it inside my Snowflake account. And then we're going to connect to it a variety of ways through different web interfaces and talk about other ways to connect to it.
Yeah, I love it. As an old-timer, I see you still haven't switched to Snowsite.
Yeah, this is the classic user interface. I joined Snowflake 5 years ago and spent much of time with this. So I'm clinging on as long as possible, but Snowsite is awesome as well.
Yes, but I love how this demo of Llama starts with all the classic Snowflake constructs. So you're using a role, you're using a warehouse.
Yeah.
That's called Services Now or Service Snow.
Yes, that's the name of a secret project. I guess not secret anymore, but leading up to our conference, we had a effort to get as many of our customers and partners early adopting this to really test it out. And we called it Services Now. Services being Snowflake Container Services, Snowpark Container Services. That's
cool.
The name.
So
yeah.
we start nice. We start in a very normal place, but then you have a image repository creation.
Image, yes, image repository. So this is a new concept inside Snowflake, part of the private preview for Snowpark Container Services. And it's a place where you can put images, meaning Docker or other OCI compliant container images. And so you simply create a container repository like this, give it a name, service repo, and then I can show it. And I can see it has a URL. I'm going to use that to push Docker containers to it and some other stuff. So it's a new place. This is a secure place to put not just your data now in Snowflake, but also to put your software, basically. Any of your own code or enterprise code or open source stuff you want to run inside Snowflake, you just package it up as a Docker container and throw it in there.
Cool. And the last thing we need to say about this, it's in private preview right now, so only a select few have access to this, but everyone can see you playing with this, and soon it will be in public preview.
That's right.
Excellent. Let's move on.
Right. So the next thing that we do before we're able to run this is we build the Docker container that we're going to run. So to do that, I'll show you. I won't go too deep into this, but I'll show you kind of the pieces that if you've ever built a Docker container, you'll recognize. And if you haven't, it's actually really simple. You just say Docker build, and then you put this Docker file and stuff like that. But there's a file called a Docker file. And this is how you define what you want to run inside Snowflake or inside the Docker container that then runs inside Snowflake. And this Docker container starts with a NVIDIA base image, it's called, so that we're already basically inheriting an image that NVIDIA has provided. You can find that on the internet if you just NVIDIA and look for PyTorch stuff. But they've done a really good job of packaging up all the basic stuff you need to run any AI-powered application, including these large language models like Llama. And you just by pulling this container with that one line, you get all the benefit of all this stuff that's already been packaged up and running inside, ready to run. So that's a cool thing. So we're basically inheriting that, so we don't have to worry about putting all that together, just pulling that in. And then we're going to put some stuff into the container. I have a little program called LLM service, a requirements file, which gives my Python requirements, a Streamlit program, and another script I'll show you in a second, and basically copying stuff from my computer into this container that I'm cooking up to send to Snowflake. And then once I do that, I'm telling the Docker container just to give itself access to execute these Python programs and shell scripts. I tell the container to install a whole bunch of Python libraries. These are Python libraries that go beyond what's in the container provided by NVIDIA. And then I tell it to run another little shell script called entry point, which I'll show you in a second.
Excellent.
Sound good? So inside here, requirements. This is the things I'm going to be pulling in addition to the container. So there's a thing called PyArrow, and I'm also bringing in the Snowflake, Snowpark, Python, and Snowpark connectors. And this allows the container running inside Snowflake to talk back to the rest of Snowflake. So by doing this, from the container, I can use a secure token that it gives me to the program so that I can access my own data using my own program really, really easily. So that's a real cool thing. Also pulling in Streamlit, which we're going to use as a user interface to, in this case, demo chat with Llama. We're going to do that through a Streamlit user interface. So I'm including Streamlit. I have no idea what Pillow is. I'm sure people in the chat know. Pulling in the OpenAI, this isn't to bring in ChatGPT or anything. This is actually just to pull in the API for OpenAI. because one of the things that we can do here too is basically hook the OpenAI API up to the Llama model. Normally OpenAI's API runs somewhere else, but here we're going to run it locally, and we're going to point it at the Llama model. So you can actually use anything that knows how to talk to ChatGPT. We can instead repoint that and talk to our Llama container, which is really cool. And they're going to bring in a thing called Jupyter, which is a notebook service I'll show you, and also Fast Chat. And it's really cool just by putting in one word like Jupyter here, you get the whole like Jupyter notebook system running inside your container.
Excellent.
So a bunch of stuff. We have a Python program called LLM demo. This is, I won't go into the details. Wait, what's that? That's a SQL script. That's not a, let's see, LLM service Pi. Here we go. This is a Python program that basically responds to Snowflake. Because Snowflake talks to the container using, so it can power user-defined functions in SQL. This basically allows you to hook Snowflake's SQL interface up to stuff running inside the container by basically exposes a HTTP endpoint that handles post and GET requests and stuff like that. And you can build things like this that allow it to, for example, if you call UDF called ping, it responds with pong, or if you call UDF called LLM complete, it responds with things that Llama is telling you and stuff like that, right directly from SQL. So that's kind of how the container comes together. And then the last thing it does, this is all going to happen when we turn it on, is it runs these startup commands inside the container. So entry point means once the container is running inside Snowflake, Snowpark Container Services, then run these things. And what these things are doing is turning on the things that are actually going to run the Llama model. So in this example, we're using something called Fast Chat, which is an open source thing that can actually pull LLMs from Hugging Face, which is where we're pulling this Llama model. Meta has put it on Hugging Face, and we're pulling it down, the actual weights of the model. And we're going to run it inside this container using something called Fast Chat. Then we're going to serve it through the OpenAI compatible API, and we're going to turn on a web server interface called Gradio, and then we're also going to turn on the Streamlit system so we can chat with it. So a lot of stuff.
I can't wait to start chatting with it.
All right, let's go.
Awesome.
All right, so that's a little bit of the under the hood view. But I'm going to go ahead and proceed with, now that we have that container, I've, before the show, built the container on my laptop and pushed it up. It's about 7 gigs, so it takes a minute or two to push up from my computer to Snowflake. But then after that, we're going to basically tell Snowflake a little bit more, a couple more things it needs to know before it can actually run this container. And to do that, we're going to create a file in Snowflake stage. So I created a stage here called service stage. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. This is different from the repository. This is where we're going to put a definition of the service I want to run inside Snowflake. And that's going to be in a YAML format. And so here I'm using a little helper program that is actually kind of cool. If you ever want to have a little function in Snowflake that sends arbitrary text snippets into files in stage, you can write something like this, put to stage, which just does that. But I'm going to use that little function to create a file in my stage called LLM service 2. And then this is the spec of the service. This tells Snowflake what kind of service I want to run inside the container services. And if you've ever used Kubernetes, this looks like a version of the Kubernetes description of how to run a container to some extent. And the main thing it needs to know is like what container I want to run in my service that I'm going to run inside Snowflake. And this is the most important thing to tell it, is where is the image? And this points to that image repository, and it gives it a pointer to a specific Docker container that I've pushed earlier. Cool. Makes sense? So it needs a couple environment variables when it gets going. It needs to know which LLM model you want to pull in. So a cool thing about this system is you can pull pretty much any model from Hugging Face. Like you don't have to run Llama. Like this is Meta's Llama 2 7 billion size, which is the smallest Llama. And Meta just makes it available here inside a system called Hugging Face, which is where you can pull in models, open source or otherwise, models that other people have built. You can see they offer 3 sizes of Llama currently, 7, 13, and 70. We're just going to run 7 today because it spins up the fastest, but you can run the other ones too. But you can run other models as well. There's all kinds of models inside here. There's one called Vasuna, for example, which is a precursor model developed by somebody else. But there's I don't know, hundreds, thousands of large language models that you can run this way just by simply changing that meta tag to say you want to run this one. You just pop that in to the environment variable here instead of that, and then you can run a different large language model.
Cool.
Yep. you tell it some other stuff, how many GPUs you want to use, where your Hugging Face token is if you need one. And then you tell it which ports you want to expose. So this container we're going to run, it exposes basically endpoints that I can use not only through Snowflake, but I can use through just a regular web browser. And I'll show you how that works. So we're going to turn on a way to get into the Jupyter Notebook, the Streamlit, the OpenAI API, the Gradio server, and also give it an endpoint for UDFs. So this is how you tell Snowflake kind of the definition of the service you want. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into my stage. Unexpected UDF. Uh-oh, here's where it starts to go off the rails. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine. There we go. So you had a little M hanging out at the end there. And then, yeah, fixed. That was quick. All right. So now we actually create the service. Felipe, the moment you've been waiting 17 minutes for, we're going to turn on this service. Press go.
One instance,
and,
compute pool.
Oh, compute pool. Yeah. Show compute pools. This is also a new thing. So compute pools, it's kind of like warehouses in Snowflake, where you run SQL. You could have different sizes, large, medium, small. We have a new concept called compute pools. And compute pools are basically computers running in, the cloud server that you're running Snowflake in. And they have different sizes and different characteristics. In this case, since it's a large language model, I'm using a compute pool called test pool snowcat JL GPU 10, which you can see here, if I sort this and move this window a little bit, is running versus suspended. That's good, because if it's suspended, our LinkedIn Live might also be suspended while we wait for it to wake up. We don't have to, because it's running. Good. This is GPU 10. So this is running the biggest GPU instance that we offer inside Container Services. And you can see how many services are running and other stuff about it like that.
I see so many GPUs. That's cool. It's so good to be friends with NVIDIA partners.
Yeah, and with Amazon. Yes. Exactly. So so you can see different sizes, and this is cool because you can isolate different kinds of compute if you want. If you want one Llama to run in this size compute inside Snowflake, if you want something else to run on a smaller thing, maybe without GPUs, you can do that just by creating and using different compute pools.
Excellent.
Cool. So I ran this create service thing, right? So let's see if it's running. So I'm going to do show services. And oh no, Felipe, we've done it again.
Where are your semicolons?
Uh-oh, what's wrong?
We need more semicolons. Before,
what?
After, everywhere.
Oh, you're just commenting about semicolons? Okay. All right, cool. So that this guy lets me check kind of what's going on with this service. So I call it LLM service. I'm getting the service status, and I'm just seeing what's going on. And I can see that it's ready. Oh, that's good news. We're getting close to chatting with the Llama, Felipe.
Wow.
I can also get the log. So this has been running just for a few minutes here. I can open this up, and it's been running since 17:18. So a minute ago. I don't know where 17 is. So it's some 5 p.m. in England probably. But anyway, so we can see this is the log. So the container that I put in the Docker file, it actually is now running inside Snowflake, and it's generating logs. And it's telling me what it's doing. It's doing the things I told it to do at entry point. So it started Jupyter. It started Streamlit. It started other stuff. So this is looking good. It looks like it's ready for us to interact with.
So crazy for me to see this running all inside Snowflake. These are the Snowflake commands, and you have GPUs. You have an image.
GPUs and Docker, any program you want. Like you could run that BBS that you and I were writing when we were 7 years old. You could package it up in a Docker container with a PC emulator, and we could run a BBS inside Snowflake if you want to. Somebody should try that. If they do, let me know. I'll be highly fascinated. Okay, so show services. I can see which services I'm running, including this LLM service, the one I just started. And I can then get the endpoints. What the endpoints are is now that this thing is running, I want to be able to talk to it. I want to interact with it. And the way I'm going to interact with it is just through URLs. And back in that YAML file, I showed you the Jupyter endpoint and some other stuff. I told it to expose meaning I can get to that port inside the container using a special URL that's pointed directly in through Snowflake into that container. There will be some security along the way, so don't worry about that. Let's see. You want to chat with the Llama, or do you want to see a Jupyter notebook first? What do you want to do? Felipe?
Oh my God, I want to chat. I want to see what you're doing with Streamlit here.
Streamlit. You want to go right to Streamlit? All right. Let's do it.
I mean, it's part of this whole new world where you have.
Yeah. All right. So Streamlit. So this endpoint, the Streamlit, I'm just going to copy this. This is URL. Might not look like it, but that's a URL. I'm going to open up a new tab. Oh, I got one new tab. Look at that.
Service
And I'm going to just
Snow.
paste in this URL. You can put HTTP if you want before it and all that jazz. I'm going to paste that in. And what happens is it says, who are you? So it's basically popping up the Snowflake security layer before it's letting you into this compute container, which is running in Snowflake, which, by the way, as I mentioned, has the access to your data. So you have to be careful about who you let into these services because they are running inside Snowflake, running inside your Snowflake account with access to your data. So security is, of course,
yeah. And in production,
important.
we would use single sign-on, but because it's a test, it's okay to have your own password.
Well, you can do it either way. So you can use single sign-on. You can use password. Yeah, you might want to expose services that have a different single sign. Maybe these are exposed to your customers or something like that. There's all kinds of things you might want to do in terms of who can get into this. It's not necessarily the same people who are accessing your database.
Beautiful.
But, oh no! See how secure it is?
Yes, that's
standard password joke.
Love the security. Excellent.
So secure. All right. Great. Hey, this is Streamlit. So we're in Streamlit. You see this thing down here? It says your message.
Yep.
So So we now can talk to the Llama that's running inside Snowflake.
Does anyone have a live suggestion question you would love to ask Llama running in Snowflake?
Uh-oh.
Ooh. Well, why people get creative? Let's say, hey, can you tell me? Can you tell me a joke about Snowflake, the polar bear?
Okay.
Of course, snowtastic joke for you. Why did Snowflake, the polar bear, go to the party? Because he wanted to have a barely good time.
Interesting. Can I ask it something more business related? Do you mind if I do that?
Let's do some business. Yes.
All right.
Snowflake's a very enterprise.
SQL to create a table to store data about my customers. How about that? Let's see if we can write some SQL.
Oh, look at this with primary keys, customer
It's giving
address.
me all kinds of show SQL to make this table. There we go. I've never seen anyone comment each field. Wow, look at that. It's dreamed up a new way to document it's put little comments in. That's very cool. So it's basically suggesting that you could run this to create a table in Snowflake to store data about your customers and tells you all about it. So this is running inside Streamlit, as we mentioned. Streamlit is an open source web. I don't know how to describe it. It's a way to build user interfaces that are really amazing. And Streamlit, which is actually a part of Snowflake now, but it's still open source, has a component called st.chat, and that provides this out-of-the-box chatbot interface just as an open source component. So you can talk to your Llama through st.chat. Anything else you want to ask it?
Yeah, the last question I want to ask it is how to convince live stream viewers to ask more live questions. James Hogan says, this is slick.
Maybe you just put their questions into Llama and okay. Let's try some of the techniques.
Lead by example. As a streamer, I should lead by example. I should ask questions. We have to make it interactive. Offer incentives. What incentives do you want people? Build a community. This is an awesome community. And make it fun. Are you having fun? Are you entertained? Okay, here I have a difficult question, Colin. Let's see if you can answer this by Colin Sutherland. He wants to get dynamic tables code. That's an interesting question because it's asking about something new. How would you solve this, Justin?
Oh, yeah. So the way you would solve this is, seems to know about dynamic tables.
Oh my God. Let us see.
That's kind of cool.
Yes. Does it know about dynamic tables in Snowflake?
I don't know about that. How about... This is Llama we're talking to. So
yes.
One thing, we're working on lots of stuff at Snowflake, some of which we demoed at our conference, that actually give large language models like this, and you can also do it with OpenAI and others, the ability to access things outside of its pre-trained knowledge. And that's some of my other blogs are about this topic, about fine-tuning versus what's called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. There's ways to make chatbots smarter about specific topics that it may or may not already know about, although it's at least pretending to know about creating dynamic.
Yes.
But yeah, so by using some of these other techniques, you can actually do what's called kind of injecting knowledge into the prompt, or taking this model called Llama, and you can fine tune it. Actually, that's described a little bit in my blog, where you can fold in more data, either about Snowflake and how it works, or about the data you have in Snowflake, or about your own business, and you can kind of create new models. And that's a real reason there's so much excitement in the community about this model from Meta, because the first, this is called Llama 2. There was a Llama 1, and Llama 1 is actually what's running underneath hundreds of open source chatbots, including this Suna one and stuff like that. And Llama 2 is going to open the door to make really bespoke chatbots. So you can use Snowflake to take your data, take your documents, take whatever, and fold it in, stir it up, and pop out a brand new large language model that you could use that would be stored in your Snowflake account. It would never go anywhere. Train in your Snowflake account. It would live there. You could use it there, and it would never leave it unless you wanted to. Which we think is super cool.
Yeah, I love it, because yes, we just took a pre-trained model. The fact that we can train models with our data, with our documentation, and do a next version where it knows exactly what dynamic tables are, how they're used. Right now, it invented a lot, because that's what LLMs do. But we could train it with our own data, and that's for a
this is just
future
a
live
starting
show.
point. Yeah,
and
this is just a starting point. You can take the bigger Llama model, you can fold in all kinds of stuff, and people are really, really excited about this, because you don't have to send your data outside, and you can have your own model that's just for you, just for your company, and do whatever you want with it, or many, many models.
Yep. We have 3 minutes left, and we have some interesting questions. Like, for example, Caroline and John are asking, what does this add over just using Docker, Kubernetes, Jupyter? Access to your Snowflake DBs mostly? Like, why are we doing this inside Snowflake? How?
Oh yeah, why would you just so like let's talk about Jupyter for a second. Thanks for the segue. So another endpoint I exposed was Jupyter. So also running in the same container is a Jupyter notebook, also securely guarded with my complex password. Yeah, so here you go. So this is Jupyter now. It's emitting itself directly from Snowflake. So so in here you can create a notebook. I have, for example, you have access to Snowflake Stage, so you can see this little folder Stage. This is actually not in the container. This is pointing to files stored in a Snowflake Stage, which is super cool. You can see, for example, the fine tuning that I was describing. I have a sample notebook here. This is a Jupyter notebook. You actually run this inside your account. So it's running inside your account. So some of the benefits, I think the question might be, well, you could also run this in any kind of Kubernetes hosted service. The benefit here is many. One is that you get immediate direct access to your Snowflake data without doing any logins or anything, because it has that built-in security token. So you can immediately start using Jupyter to securely interact with your data. It even inherits the role of the user using it. So it knows who's using it, or who created the service, and inherits their rights and roles and RBAC inside the database, which is super cool, and otherwise might be difficult to hook up. Another thing is just logistically, like if you're a Snowflake user, you might, a Snowflake admin or Snowflake Power user, you might not have access to run Docker containers or to run things in your company's Kubernetes system or whatever. But now just directly through Snowflake, you can simply run 5 lines to create a service. And if under that service you have the Docker file that I showed you, and if all you had to do in this case was, as I showed before, just put the word Jupyter in this little file. So just putting this word in Jupyter in this little file and then running this, I suddenly have my own Jupyter notebook running inside Snowflake, and my data is not going anywhere else. It's all running right inside my Snowflake account.
That's beautiful. Yes, security and controlling everything, and especially if you're going to surface private data that should be private, where you
people have gone out of their way to secure their Snowflake accounts like really strongly with rights and roles. And the fewer things you have, I don't know, it's just being able to run it directly there with that security context and wrapper just by default immediately applied. Super convenient.
Yeah, we are on time, but just I love to go back to the live questions. We can answer them later. I have a quick question here from running ChatGPT through Snowflake. We have blog posts on that because Snowflake can access external functions, but our friend Dash wrote about that. There are more blog posts. Check our Snowflake Reddit And anything? Oh, I have so many cool questions now, but we need to start closing. So, Justin, how would you like to close this? What is your?
Yeah, no, this one on the question on the screen right now is pretty good. Can you question related to your data or something like that? Yeah, running basically we have posted something called the Frosty. Let me see. So this blog here, or this quick start, actually, we'll get to that
Quick
question.
start.
So if you Google,
Excellent.
yeah, I Googled basically Frosty chatbot Snowflake if you're trying to find this. But this quick start actually does what that. So it uses the Streamlit chat, the thing we demoed today, and it also, to the prior question, connects. This connects to the OpenAI API by default. You could repoint it to Llama if you wanted to. This one is doing the prior questions thing. So this is a great thing to explore as well. You can see this nice little demo here is actually not only accessing your Snowflake data, but it's letting you talk about your tables in Snowflake. It's drafting SQL about your tables. This uses that RAG approach, where behind the scenes, it's actually telling the chat bot about your tables, about your data, based on the things you're typing in the context of your chat right now. So I'd point people to this for a more advanced example of that. Yep.
And we have a quick start ready for you. That's awesome. Where should people learn more about this? How can they follow you? How can they keep updated with all the latest announcements from Snowflake and your cool demos?
For me, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of blogs and stuff like that. And Felipe, what about for the rest of the stuff?
Oh, I love when people follow me, but also we have the Snowflake LinkedIn page. We have the Snowflake Twitter. Hopefully, we will have the Snowflake threads. And I used to post all the news on Reddit. Now I have slowed down my Reddit consumption, but until we have a replacement, still Reddit or Snowflake is a good place to meet. And with that, thanks a lot for everyone to showing up here. Justin, please keep us suggesting us topics for the next time, posting your questions, sharing this live stream. And I think it's time to make the polar bear dance us off.
Great.
Thank you, Justin. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.